Welcome. I think this is one of the, this is like the first Weavers Symposium I think that we've ever done here in Juneau that's, open to the public. Usually when we have Weavers gatherings wherever, anyways, ones that I've attended or helped organize, they've always been private. And in this case, this is the first time we've got several people prominent weavers who are here to share their knowledge with you. And thank you so much for coming. I want to thank Sealaska Heritage Institute, Kari Groven, for helping to host this and help coordinate all this. I want to thank all you weavers who have come from out of town to be a part of this gathering and presentation. I know a lot of you have been doing it for a good number of years in your own communities, and it's exciting. It's really exciting to gather some of us weavers here today. First, we'll start with a song opening here with Irene Jean Lampy, who's Daewoo Ji. And I'll have her introduce the song. We'll scratch that part, and we're going to do the prayer first with Marcia Hotch. All right? First things first.
Ach dwasigu gunilchish ye hwakai Sealaska in ka Larissa adat yejiwune wushkanach wutud adi yayigi Haida nak gunilchish hadikian kawu Atlain gunilchishtin aya ikosit watua at yayigi katsu hajine yitu hajit iati ya kasne itlikhedli kaye negatit yayigi takadat yanakhihi kayahana gunilchish atlain gunilchishtin aya Shtuka haditi, Chatlakha in iati, Iit sai tunach. Amen.
I'll bring those stand over here. Stand up here.
Can I back it up? Can I back it up?
Yeah. Just okay. You want to introduce the song?
Sure. The song that I'm going to do is by a man named Shlun Ish, Wise Father, of the Mount Bearweather House, Sathlan Hit. Did I say John K. Smith? He was the house leader at one time. And so when he passed, this song went to my grandmother and eventually to one of my aunts, my mother and I. And I have his robe today. This song hadn't been sung for quite some time, about 35 years, and I realized it had to be sung again. I brought it out at my cousin Pat Mills's party a few years ago. It's a love song, and in English, the first verse is, "Many endless thanks to the children of the Dukdainton are coming from your older brothers' mouths. You are like the breath in my mouth when you pour the air into me." He's referring to the love I'm in need of, and I sigh with great satisfaction. And the second verse, it says, "They all come to me, my grandparents and my grandfathers from their land." And what he really means is he's had a vision of his ancestors coming to him. From this, I am filled with joy. After this comes upon me, I will experience deep inner pain. Just one thing I want to say, I don't mind people recording, just don't use it for commercial purposes. Thank you.
Our first presenter is Marcia Hotch. What's that? Oh, that's right, the balance song. I'm sorry. Yeah, Jean, can she use your drum? That's right. In our tradition, there's the reciprocation So we are on the Raven side of the family. I mean, Raven side of the, tribal entities, and now we're having the Eagle side. This is Shken George with her 2 daughters. She is Eagle. Do you want this?
Gunach sí steachtain tan. Ach is ruhas an chachi tan. Ach sí ruhas déis tan. Oet su Ryan AD. Cal guhiu chat dusak. Dachto lady kidu.
So this is my daughter, Gabrielle. Her Tlingit name is Shawat Gu. We're Duchloedi from Angoon. And she's going to sing a song today that I think is fitting if we're thinking about balance from an old song that hasn't been sung for years. Her song, which she has composed herself in the last few months. She composed the English words, and Dachjini, Mary Folletti, and Pune Lance Twitchell helped her with translations. And the translation to the song is, "We are the seeds in everyone's remains, our ancestors' remains. We are here following in your footsteps that you've left. The children of the Duchloedi hope that the rain is not your tears. Don't cry for us. Our language is not going to run out of our possession." Abby's been working really hard on learning our songs and our history and our language, and that was her inspiration for the song.
Here's Marcia Hodge. She's has specialized in the knowledge of, the processing of mountain goat. And there's very few of us who know how to do this. And if you have a program guide, you can read about her in here. And otherwise, I would say I would read it, but I know that we're pressed on time. So I'll leave it up to Marcia to show you guys her knowledge. Marcia Hodge.
Gunalchish. I began my journey in the early 90s learning how to weave. And I see some of my teachers in here. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. I have a presentation prepared. I can't bring my stuff. I usually present in schools, and so I have a little hands-on, but I couldn't bring that in today. So I just pushed. I'm new at this. Push the space bar. Okay, my Tlingit name is Guneote. And the Tlingit word you see up there is Chilkat Kasne. Kasne means it's the weaving part. And it's not cedar bark. Cedar bark is different. We have a different phrase for this. This is specifically to the woolen fibers. And it's also gone to, when they were introduced to modern yarns, knitting also. So, because it's working with the woolen fibers. So, I am a language teacher, so it always, there's the mountain goat wool. We take it from the mountain goat, and we know that it's been used for centuries. Our ancestors have utilized it, and all in through the northwest coast. There's a slide I couldn't find, but if you get on the internet, it shows you where the mountain goats, their ranges along the Cascade Mountains and up into the southeast of Alaska and a little bit into the interior. And those are one of my two grandsons. In my journey of learning how, I had asked a dear friend, and this is how I got encouraged to go all the way back. I'd asked my dear friend to teach me how to Chilkat weave. I was all excited. I knew how to Ravenstail and cedar bark weaving. But Chilkat is different, and I always knew in my heart, since I seen those robes as a little girl, that I was going to learn. But my friend couldn't teach me, but it encouraged me to go back while I was waiting for an instructor. And I went all the way back to studying how did they get the wool off the hide, what did they do, what did it all entail, how long did it take. And so that was my journey. In November of 2004, that picture you see at the bottom there is my grandson posing with a mountain goat that his dad and his grandfather had gotten. But the little guy ran up and got his little BB gun, and came down, and that's what he wanted to do with it. So sorry, but this is how mountain goat is processed. And one of my other inspirations was when I would look at some of the robes that Jenny Tlingit had done, especially the recent ones, I had often wondered who was the hunter? And I knew of several people, and my family are mountain goat hunters, and I know the dangers that are there. And so it takes collaboration with the community to be able to weave. It's wonderful to weave, but the preparation and how a weaver gets to weave, there's a process there. And I think sometimes back earlier, that process wasn't really mentioned. So that was one of the things that took me back there. So I'm sorry if this offends you, but it's a mountain goat one of my sons had gotten, and he took the picture for me. So this is how they're up on the mountain, and this is my second son, and he's packing the mountain goat off of the mountain. And these can weigh anywhere from 180 to 200 pounds, and some billy goats over 300 pounds. And this is off of the mountain and back of Klukwan. And this is his son, Alex, my grandson. So they're bringing it home. They don't usually do this. They usually try to skin it and make it lighter. A lot of times hunters will leave the hides up there. It's a lot of weight and the head and everything. But they brought it down, and I have the wool from those. And so here the skinning part, and as you can see, the blood gets in there. So I'm thinking of this, and the cleaning part is a chore too. Because how do you get from that dirty wool hide to this beautiful? So I think the video is not working here, but this is one of my first hides, and I didn't know exactly how to do it. Agnes Bellinger was in our community doing some teaching, and I was fortunate to have her staying at my house when that mountain goat came down off the mountain. And she walked me through what her mother did and rolled it up and left it out. Sometimes some weavers leave it in a cool place in their home. And I experienced, like in the fall time, there's a lot of bugs. So there's a process that happens with bugs. So I learned that. And I'm not going to go into And getting beyond, I just wanted to share when I first unrolled after leaving it, and I started unrolling my hide to slip the wool off. And when that smell, you have to get beyond that after you've left the hide there for a while. So, but when that smell started getting up to me, I started having memories tumbling out. It was just like, and I just started crying because I actually had my hands in mountain goat wool as a little girl. I had forgotten that, but just smelling that mountain goat and having my hands in it and pushing it again. The lady that took me to that process was Anna Katzig's sister, and I can't remember her, Nina. And she was the one that showed me when I was a little girl, so I just want to acknowledge her. Sometimes it's cold in the fall time. My grandson was just 5. Sometimes it would be like 30 degrees, and when you're out there trying to unroll it, get the wool off, he would come out and join me. He enjoyed seeing the whole process. This is my grandson, and he wanted to try every little bit of the process of washing it is another way. There are certain things you can do with it, and certain things you can't do, or otherwise you won't have your wool. You can mat it. So handling wool, as probably we all know, how many have stuck a woolen shirt in the washer? You don't want to do that. So I don't need to go into it. Cleaning it and carding it, drying it. I tried drying down here in Juneau, and the weather is really wet, and so probably summer times would be better. I froze my hides or just leave them and do them when I can. Through this process, we did dyeing in our community. Mountain goat accepts the dye differently than sheep. Alpaca accepts dye differently than different fibers accept the dye. Could be the same thing, you could have the same amount of time, everything, but it does different things. So got to experiment with that. We're getting it ready to dye. This is commercial with the high school. Spinning was another chore. The earlier you got your mountain goat, the shorter fibers, so it was just spinning, whereas you see sheep spinners, they have this nice, I can't remember what they call it, grafting, but I had to be very patient. And so doing the wefts, I don't think I'd do the wefts anymore. I'd just do the thigh spinning, those for the warp. Wolf moss. Our ancestors had to trade for it. It grows, we don't get this nice bright yellow, but I had a lady, one of my students, his grandmother sent me a box of wolf moss. And there's the beginning dyeing in wolf moss. It fades, it doesn't stay. These are some of my accidents with mountain goat wool. We did a copper dye, and I made my solution the way I was told. I put it into the jar of ammonia and the copper, and it was cold, but oh my goodness, do you guys know what ammonia smells like? And so I'm holding it like that, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I thought, well, I guess I'll rinse it off. So I ran into the house. It was cold. I didn't want it to freeze, and I didn't want it to break. So I ran in and I put the skein under the running water without thinking, and it immediately, that beautiful teal went to a gray. And then later on, I was dyeing things, and it came out a green. I put it in yellow, so from gray to green. So I was able to visit the museum years ago, and they allowed me to take my stuff in. The one in the blue basket is my stuff, and I just wanted the old to meet the new and let them know we're still trying to do the best we can. So I was able to look at some templates, and actually that teal is the one, and then no, that's a different teal. But those are some of my weft spinning, my beginning project. I don't know how much time I have. This is an apron I started. It still needs to be completed. My mentor, a lot of I have many mentors, and I am always thankful for them. Alice Taff is a mentor in a different way because I teach Tlingit language, and it's that encouragement that enables us to do, what we need to do. And Clarissa has mentored me in Chilkat weaving and helped me to get kinks out and stay focused. Agnes Bellinger. She's the daughter of Jenny Tlingit. She's Kagwanton. Joe Hotch. Smith Katzik. And of course, Dolores. Dolores, the second year when I was trying to figure out how to spin it, I couldn't figure it out. And it kept not spinning. It didn't look right. And Dolores came into town, so she helped me beyond that. And this is the second year, so I could make warp. And this is my other mentor, Evelyn Hotch. She's the granddaughter of Annie Claney, and there are several robes that Annie Claney made that's around, and I think there's some in this building too. So she was kind of talking to me about how she would help with process, preparing some of it before it was actually spun. My beginning projects, I was called one time from the legislative building and asked if I could do an art piece. And this is what I was doing. Got rid of all my quilting. This is what I'm going to focus on. And this is one of my first projects. And I said, I'm Chilkat weaving. You probably don't want it. And they said, we'll take it. So guess where it sits? In a Christmas tree. When the legislator puts out their Christmas tree, that piece is in there. And my grandchildren. And I got to try a robe on. Gunafchish. I don't know if there's time for questions. Okay. Okay. Gunafchish.
Yeah, we have like 7 other presenters, so what we're going to do is we'll have question and answers afterwards. We're kind of playing it by ear as far as who comes up next and all of that. It's the first day of celebration, but all the preparation that comes into getting here, as all of us know, it takes a while to get here to Juneau. I think we'll have Della Cini come on up. Della is originally from Cake, and she will be doing the next presentation next.
Hawagunas Chish for being here. My family is here from Haida, and some from Ketchikan, Saxman, Cake, Sitka. And it's just a real good feeling, and the spirit is here. Just bear with me. I'm not a techie person. I'm a old-fashioned paper person. Kahwe is weaving our world. Dathkawas hinu. Kat Keith Dikiang. Dathkawas is my Haida name. Delachini hinu yas kat ai Keith Dikiang. Delachini is my English name. God's akas gustu dikulagan. I am of the eagle family. Chitskitnai jana sudi ijang. I'm a hummingbird woman. Stathkawas hinu di nan kiagan. My grandmother. Guskin hinu di chin kiagan is my grandfather. Nangkuigegit kianans di au kiagan. Nangkuigegit kianans is my mother. Ganaheg hinu di hat kiagan. Ganaheg was my father. Hatlaga dagan, he's Tlingit. Katsawayu hattu asak. Yetna hatsati. Kajariaya hat. Zakwediariaya hat. Kekshwanaya hat. Hawagunas Chish for the invitation. To speak with you about weaving. I probably am a teenager at weaving. That's the age that I'm at, weaving. My grandfather, Gooch Ish, would say about a time like this, we will think good wishes for you. He firmly believed in the power of thoughts to heal and begin change. So when we weave, we are in a good place, creating beautiful woven items for family and friends. Our ancestors have left us a legacy that you see in this building. Each art piece, regalia, and our ancestral bones that are in museums around the world are part of us and our history. When I look into the room and see the weavers, I see how we're connected. Each of us is a warp. And the things that we create are the weft. Each robe, each hat, each apron will move forward with our children and grandchildren through time. Today, as I weave and create new regalia, the techniques I practice are from the time before us. The new date, I believe, of carbon dating is into the 10,000s of years ago. All the items of the past and today are usually gifted or traded to bring comfort and peace to our family, friends, and community. These celebrations of life recognize the beauty of love in our families that we share with the world. Most of my weavings are gifted to specific people in our community. My mother, husband, daughters, sisters, brother-in-laws, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, our family, and grandchildren. Of among those people are our most precious Father's family. With more to be woven items made from wool, red and yellow cedar bark, spruce root, and we decorate with maidenhair fern and grass, feathers, and animal skins. Help us continue a legacy. In the time before us, there were many weavers. There had to be, to provide clothing, bedding, household goods, storage, and cooking items for our families. So our children were taught to be weavers, carvers, medicine men and medicine women. And we were harvesters of the land, the sea, and the sky. My father shared information in one of our dinners and said, time before us, children were taken to the carvers, the weavers, the historians, so that they could learn how to be those people, storytellers. I often wondered, who would I have been taken to? That would have been just a dream, a place. That's all I would do. And the historians are people, very important people in our families, because they kept track of all of these beautiful items, like Evelyn's wearing. And her daughter was wearing one too. And there's so many things we'll see this week at Celebration. Because they're so treasured, we have to keep the history of it in our families. Even if they are housed in different places around the world with collectors or museums, they still carry the history of our families. The celebrations and ceremonies are so important in our communities. That's why it was warranted that we understand who we are, where we come from, which clans, how we're related to each other. Takes a lot of planning to put on something like this, or a ku'i, or a chieftainship party. So seems like we're always getting ready, harvesting materials to create these beautiful gifts. Because we can't use them immediately sometimes. We have to make the cedar bark rest for a year, the yellow cedar. And so it seems like we're always getting ready. The special items that are gifted, elders and people of different clans create an oratory that connects it to them if you gift it to them. These beautiful connections bring us to relatives from time before us, connect us to the history. And at these doings, when we hear Hawa and Gunash Chish, those are very precious and strong words that we hear and are thankful for them. I think it's such an honor to be here with our families and mentors and teachers to learn and continue practicing our way of life. I hope I'm not sounding like Weaving 101. My daughter says, Mother, don't make it sound like Weaving 101. But that's where I'm going. In beginning, a weaving is created in the mind's eye, and the story begins. The colors chosen add to the presence of the story. Patterns will tell you the main honor being given. And the form created is the hat, robe, earrings, or art piece. The history has started in the gift. So the weaving or art piece is begun in the training of the weavers. The harvesting and processing, I can't even imagine, Marcia, all that you went through. Goodness, sheesh. To create these beautiful gifts. This is a very precious time when we start to weave with the materials we harvest and process, because a life was given or taken to complete the gift. The time and presence of the artist to create the gift was and is one of high priority. As you know, time is so precious, and it zooms by faster every day I get older. Seems like we were just here 2 years ago, yesterday. But here we are again. And we got to be mindful of the seasons and what we're planning for the next 2 seasons. So we get all our materials ready, then we're ready to weave. In Ravenstail, the first rows are called the set. And it creates the tension in the Ravenstail robe. This brings the artist's mind to how long it's going to take to weave the rows it's going to take to finish the robe. One row is maybe 45 minutes. One row of weaving. And that's after you've drawn the design that's taken 3 or 4 months to do. Of course, then it's like the Cheshire cat, right? Each row brings out another piece of the picture. And then pretty soon you're looking at something that's looking back at you. Oh, what a wonderful feeling it is. This robe, Hahwe, that I brought today, Weaving Our World, is about leadership and change. for my daughter, Kiwilduns, their Haida name. Anshawatki is her Tlingit name. And her name, now we add Dr. Gail Irene Sheeny. Our cousin Clarence Jackson told me when I gifted my youngest daughter, Liz, her robe to honor her Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Arizona, that I must say, I am gifting this woman of justice robe to my daughter, Elizabeth Medicine Crow, at a party. If I don't gift it to her there, my clan could claim the robe. So I had to name her as the recipient of the gift. I began this robe, the Chachwe robe, in 2011 and 2012. I'm going to ask my daughter Gail to come down and put the robe on. And Shken, could you help robe her? And I need another eagle. My niece Sandy. Oh. Because they're robing her, I'll have to pay them, but I didn't bring out enough money, so I'll have to do that later. Hawa. Hawa. Ganahake. Hawa. After I started weaving, immediately I stopped because it was a turning in towards the center instead of going straight down. Because I found out I had cancer. So this robe had already begun to change my life. It survived because I took out 14 inches of weaving and had Kay Parker come and look at my weaving because the warps were different sizes for some reason. So I had to add in more warps. Not every one, but every other one, or where it looked like it needed more. Anyway, I unwove it. And now my robe is a survivor too. This robe began with our ancestors and is now with us. The weaving technique. These patterns are from old basket designs. And I changed the bottom right row of the flying geese that brought the present into it. Because it shows the changing of leadership of the flying geese. And because it is present, past, and future, there is two words in Tlingit that says Hashuka. I believe it's the theme of this celebration, Hashuka. And it translated by Hune Lance Twitchell says, everything we were, everything we are, and everything we will become is Hashuka. That's a very powerful way of life, to be past, present, and future. Of course, you know the sequence of our robe or our weaving is from the cedar bark or roots to then to the wool. So our weaving is follow that. The cedar bark and roots were first. And then the raven's tail with the wool. And then the youngest form, the Chilkat. And it still seems the oldest form for some reason. So, beginning this robe, the weaving, I asked, how do I show change on a raven's tail robe? And leadership too. My family, of course, I have to drag them around with me to get them thinking about things with me, because it's difficult just to try to think through things by yourself. We talked about it, and we looked at some of the natural changes in our world, the phases of the moon, the seasons, the human being, the trees, the buds to the flowers, caterpillars to butterflies, and a lot more natural signs of change. We looked and thought about the patterns that I could actually weave in Ravenstail. It doesn't include the circle. So some of those were already knocking out. We chose the flying geese pattern because it shows leadership and change, not only in the bird formation, but also in the direction they fly, north to south. Of course, the first change symbol on the robe is a fireweed pattern because it shows the change of the season. And now, the excitement of the story begins in the robe. Our village, Sealaska, Kwan, is on the top of the robe. Could you open it up just a tad? Because of its importance and love for our family, and Gail is hugged each time she puts it on. I used the raven's hood pattern to frame it in the design because of our Tlingit family. We are Yaith Kajati of the freshwater marked sockeye. I wove in the Haida spider web to separate the horizontal patterns to show the strength of our Haida people who hold our lives together. Gail beaded the clasps, which I forgot, the closure, which is a hummingbird crest of the eagle Tsimshian clan of Haida. It holds her together when she dances. Colors were a next choice. We had to decide which would depict leadership and change. Starting to sound like 101 again. Gail's doctorate is in leadership and change from Antioch University. On the Hahue robe, red defines power and leadership, and white defines change. The colors red and white are the dominant colors in the background, which show the positive and negative of the Ravenstail robe. That positivity and negativity happens in our people, in our places we work, because of change. It depends on the acceptance of the new elements or the new components. There's some black in the robe, in the raven's hood pattern, which defines and reminds us of our loved ones who walked into the forest. But our love for them is still with us. The 6-twine pattern, and Dr. Dolores brought us this one from long ago, person found. It's a very strong braid, and it's on the top, right above Cape Juan, which reminds us that life was here and our people were weaving over thousands of years. Yellow is used inside that 6-twine robe or pattern to show happiness, and it's woven through Gail's life since she has completed her doctorate with Antioch. I also used yellow in the headings of the raven's hood and all our ancestors' pattern, which sprinkle happiness wherever Gail is. Yoo-hoo! In her plans for the future. The All Our Ancestors pattern is at the bottom of the Hahue robe because they hold us up in our family. It is the Haida and Tlingit ancestors. This process of weaving, of any art form, is a healing therapy for all of us. And it's just a very powerful way of life. This robe will be gifted to my daughter Gail, Dr. Gail, at the Kajati Celebration of Life Ku'ik in August of 2017. Do you want to go back? We want to go forward. And then we'll have someone robe her there of the opposite clan because I wove it. Has to be the opposite people. So as I create, just to finish up, each robe, each hat, each apron, I realize that I am a weft, weaving over the warps of time, changing the patterns, shape, and creating stories so my family historians can record and share the stories later on. How will we affect this change and leadership in our weavings, using new elements and adding in new materials of today? I love to watch some of my younger weaving students and or peers use new materials such as duct tape, garbage bags right in front of you. Could you hold that up for me, please? And they even use wax linen to weave baskets, aprons, and other items. And they are beautiful and represent today. And my niece, Sandy, taught me how to weave with plastic bottles. So I'm teaching students in Juneau School District and teaching students from around Alaska at AFN how to weave plastic bottle bracelets. So, hawa gunashtish for your time, and hawa for Larissa for putting all this together for us. It's amazing. Hawa gunashtish.
We have about 6 more presentations. Thank you, Marcia, and Kunukchish and Kunukchish Della. I was going to ask Evelyn if she'd like to step up. Evelyn Vanderhoop out of Ketchikan. Give her a hand here. Yep.
My name is Kajuth, my Haida name. My mother is Dolores Churchill, and my grandmother is Selena Paradovich. I'm a Gittins from New Masset, or Old Masset, and I'm really honored to be a presenter here. And I thank Sealaska for hosting the event. I'm often asked to talk about Northwest Coast textiles in different areas and different venues, and so I usually talk about techniques and talk about culture, but when I look around in the room, there's a lot of knowledge that is sitting in this room with a lot of weavers here knowing their stuff. So it's a little off-putting to speak with so much knowledge and culture here. But so I decided, what can I bring to you that might be new and different, that you might not have known? And so I decided to bring some of my research that I've been doing. Ever since I started weaving, my mother, Dolores, is a main mentor, and Cheryl Samuel is a main mentor of mine. And so I started learning the Ravenstail. Then I loved the color blue, so I decided to move up to the Nahin. I'd like to say something about that word Nahin. It's a word that the Tlingits and the Haidas share. And Clarissa is a Chilkat blanket weaver, a Chilkat robe weaver. She's from there. I'm a Nahin weaver. I'm a Haida weaver of the Nahin technique. So I'd like to just establish that I'm a Nahin weaver. I know I'm not pronouncing it the Tlingit way. Nathan's looking at me. He always tells me how the Tlingits pronounce it, and it's more Nahin. So I want to honor that name that both of our cultures use. So the one thing that I want to bring is my research. And I've been going back to what did we wear before the people came to see us. The people came to visit us, and then the people came to stay. So my my talk is about the Juan Perez landing in the northwest corner of Haida, because, and this is one thing I didn't know until I started studying this, Juan Perez is the first documented European visitor to our coast. In the lands that we call British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and Southeast Alaska. So he was the first. So what he and the people on board the Santiago saw, we know that was the things that we on this coast wore. So I was really excited I was in London and I went to a used bookstore, antiquated bookstore, and here was this book that was published in Oregon talking about Juan Perez. So I had to go to Britain to get this book, I guess. But what I read in it was just like amazing, that I could see through the Spanish eyes what they saw, what the Haidas were wearing. And because it was the very first contact of along this coast, it really shows what us canoe people were wearing, right? And the more I studied further into the history, and I'm not going to speak about the first sightings and what the explorers saw with the Tlingit people, or what the explorers saw with the Tsimshian people, or what the explorers saw with the Nuu people or the Salish people, because really I'm Haida and I don't want to step beyond that. But the Juan Perez was the first, and so many times, like I said before, I'm asked to speak, and my most recent audience was last fall when I hand-delivered my most recent Nahin robe to Kansas, of all places. And so I had an audience that really didn't even know too much about the Northwest Coast. So I went into Weaving 101 and talked about our place between the forest and the sea as canoe people. So today, I'd like to bring you into the past. We were canoe people, and we are canoe people. I mean, canoes are coming to the beach right now as we speak. So, So I will be talking about Juan Perez. And because I'm quoting a lot of what they saw, and I'm quoting things from important and rare documents, I will be using my digital notes. So I want to bring you back to another June, 240 years ago, in 1774, when Juan Perez was sent up to go to the 60-degree latitude, but he ran out of water and his crew was suffering from scurvy. So he made a turn into the land, and he came upon the corner of northern Haida. So this was a place that early map makers sketched with lines and dashes and empty spaces. We were, I think even New Zealand had been discovered. But map makers were drawing empty spaces where we are. So the Spanish heard that the Russians were coming and decided we want to go up to a place they, for some reason, through a papal declaration, the Spanish believed they owned the place. They'd never been there. They named it Alta California, but they decided, well, if the Russians are coming down, then we're going up. So they sent Juan Perez to see and to declare a sovereignty on the land. So he went, but he didn't reach his destination. He moved in, and the Haidas were the ones that came out to greet them. And in this beautiful painting by Gordon Miller, you see the big canoes coming out to meet the big ship Santiago. And so they probably saw this big floundering boat that couldn't go further into their land, right? So they decided, we're going to go and greet them. And greeting strangers in your territory was a very ceremonial event. So they dressed their finest, and they went out to meet the people. And on board, there were 2 Franciscan friars that their responsibility was, when they do raise the wooden cross for sovereignty, that they would do the rituals, the Catholic rituals. So they were always on board those Spanish exploring ships, and so they were on board the Santiago. And one of their responsibilities was to keep notes. So we have really well-documented notes on what they saw. So so I'm going to give you a little idea what Juan Perez's directions were. Viceroy Bucareli said, if Indian settlements are found, their inhabitations were to be treated affectionately and given the articles which he carried for this purpose. The customs, characteristics, religion, political organization, and other aspects of such natives were to be recorded. And when they did record this, every evening they read what they recorded on a daily basis, so everybody had a consensus. So when you read these documents, you're really very sure that they had all been in agreement to what they saw. So, so they were formally greeted by the Haidas, and Crespi, one of the senior Franciscan friars, the very first thing he writes about seeing those Haidas was, presently they drew near the ship, and we saw that they were 8 men and a boy. 7 of them were paddling. The other, who was advanced in age, was upright and making dancing movements. Throwing several feathers into the sea, they made a turn about the boat. And then he goes on. So this one canoe goes away, and of course they probably go to Custa or Doddins, and they tell people, look, you know, there's a big ship out there. So that evening, there was a second encounter. So Crespi talks about that evening. After the canoes had gone away and night had fallen, and we were all reciting the rosary of Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception, we again heard singing. This proceeded from another canoe, which drew near with the same ceremonies observed by the others. Seeing that no attention was paid to them because we were at prayers, the people in the canoe began to cry out, and they continued shouting until such time as the daily recital of the rosary and special prayers to some saints were concluded, and the hymn of praise, which caused great admiration on their part, was sung. So it's almost night, and the Haidas hear singing and chanting, and that was absent in the early day when they first encountered. The Spanish weren't singing and dancing. They didn't respond to the Haidas singing and dancing. But all of a sudden in the evening, the Haidas are hearing the songs on deck of this big boat. So they're thinking, well, we'll go back. They seem to be summoning us. So they're chanting, they're singing like we are. So that evening there was a second encounter, and there was more trade that evening. So Crespi goes on and he says, a sailor obtained in exchange for a large knife, he gave them a well-plated rush hat made of several colors. The crown was conical in shape, about a span high, and the rim of the hat was not more than 6 inches wide. Another sailor bought from them with a large knife a very pretty little mat, a yard square, woven of fine palms of 2 colors, white and black, which, being woven in little squares, makes a very good and handsome piece of work. So here's a few examples that maybe were what is similar to what was brought out to that ship that evening, that first evening. So there were a lot of knives that were given out in exchange for the valued woven objects. And so the Haidas, we call the people Yatshade, iron men. So you'll hear Haidas talking about non-Haidas as Yatshade. So the next day was July 1st, 1774, and Captain Perez decides in his diary to write about his encounter. The king or captain carried his tambourine, jiggling it. Before arriving, they danced and sang. Later, they began to trade their pelts of sea otter, wolves, and bears, of which the crew gathered in plenty in exchange for old clothes. They also collected some blankets, beautifully woven and made according to what I saw on a loom. I also obtained some. So Doddins and Custa were very large villages that were near this area. So that second day, there was a whole flotilla of canoes that came. There was 21 of them, and they were large, and they were from 2 very large villages. And each canoe, because there's lots of house chiefs, not the grand village chiefs, but house chiefs. So there was a lot of canoes with a lot of leaders and a lot of chiefs. And here they come, 21 large Haida canoes, and each one has a chief standing on top, and all they're in their finery, they're dancing and spreading the feathers. And the feathers were symbols of peace. So they were telling these people, we come in peace. So a lot of times people say old clothes, they traded old clothes, but it only makes sense that they were trading cloaks and woven robes. So it only makes sense that complete clothes was what they wanted. So the Spanish, who were familiar with trade along their areas, because the Spanish had been going across the Pacific for about 200 years before 1774. The Spanish were going across to the Philippines, to the Manila trade. And so once or twice a year, all the way across the vast Pacific, the Spanish were going. So the Spanish were familiar with trade. And so if the Haidas wanted old clothes, they were going to give it to them. So Fray Crespi talks about that second day. They drew close to the ship, surrounding her on all sides, and presently there began between them and our people a traffic, and we soon knew that they had come for the purpose of bartering their supplies for ours. The sailors gave them knives, old clothing, and beads, and they in return gave skins of the otter and other animals unknown, very well tanned and dressed, coverlets of otter skins sewn together so well that the best tailor could not sew them better. Other coverlets or blankets of fine wool, or the hair of animals that seemed like wool, finely woven and ornamented with the same hair of various colors, principally white, black, and yellow. the weaving being so close that it appeared as though done on a loom. All these coverlets were around the edge, a fringe of some thread twisted. So we have a yellow, black, white fringe all around. It sure sounds like our sky blankets and Ravenstail. They also gave us some little mats, seemingly made of fine palm leaves, wrought in different colors. Some hats made of reeds, some coarse and others of better quality, most of them painted, their shape being, as I have said, conical with a narrow brim and having a string which passed under the chin keeps the hat from being carried away by the wind. All appeared with the body completely covered, some with skins of otter and others animals, others with cloaks woven of wool or hair which looked like fine wool, and a garment like a cape and covering them to the waist. The rest of the person being clothed in dressed skins or the woven woolen cloths of different colors in handsome patterns. Some of these garments have sleeves, others have not. Most of them wore hats of reeds, such as I have described. The women are clothed in the same manner. So sometimes they talk about the hats being woven of reeds or rushes, but these hats were most likely woven with the red cedar and the spruce root. So the younger friar, he goes on and also speaks about what he saw that second day. All the afternoon, these canoes, 21 in all, were about the ship, their occupants trading with the ship's people, for which purpose they had brought a great quantity of mats, skins of various kinds of animals, and fish, hats made of rushes and capes made of skins, bunches of feathers arranged in various shapes, and above all, many coverlets, or pieces of woven woolen stuffs, very elaborately embroidered and about a yard and a half square, with a fringe of the same wool around the edges and various figures embroidered in different colors. Their dress consists of a cape with a fringe about the edge and a cloth reaching to the feet, made of their woven woolen stuff or of skins and covering the whole body. So in these excerpts, it clearly states there is a predominance of woven wool. And I there are people who they collect our amazing men's art of the monumental poles and the monumental canoes. But the woven wool in our canoe cultures, our garments were amazingly important to our culture and to our identity. Della did such a wonderful job talking about family and clan and relationships, and all of that is so important in our cultures. And the predominance of the wool with the with what Juan Perez saw, it's just so right there how important our garments were. So when Captain Perez came back, he wrote to his supervisor and he said, "They traded with the crew, exchanging various trinkets. I also gave them presents, and they gave me some blankets made by their own hands, which I will forward to your Excellency on my return." So Haida wool woven garments from this expedition were forwarded to Spanish King Carlos III and admired by the members of his court. But unfortunately, the forwarded wool garments have not survived the centuries since the earliest contact with the Haida. A spruce root hat and a small ivory bird are the relics that are in the Madrid, Spain's Museo de America. And my mother was able to go and study that hat. That was a precious hat that came from 1774. Someday I'll go and see it too. But so the results of this earliest Spanish northern expedition were shrouded in national secrecy. For some reason, the Spanish really didn't want people to know what was there in their land, what they thought was their land. So they didn't publish any of these expeditions. It wasn't until 1911 when there was a student who translated the Perez diary into English. Her name was Margaret Olive Johnson, a scholar at the University of California. And her English translation was used much later by that wonderful book that I found in a used bookstore in London. So that concludes my speaking about I didn't get far with my slides, but that concludes my speaking about Juan Perez. But I'd also like to be able to show you my my most recent completed robe. Elizabeth Stella was kind enough to hand deliver the robe up here to Celebration, and I just was so thrilled for Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. And my niece, Gloria, and Debbie are, sorry, Debbie. When you're up here, your mind kind of freezes. True. So they're going to help me by singing a song, and during that song, my daughter, Carrie Ann, who helped me with the weaving of this robe. And then I'm really thrilled to have my good friend Evelyn Brown also help bring this out. She helped she spun the very fine weft that's on the side of the robe. And traditionally when you bring out a robe, which I've already done, we went like I said previously, that I brought this robe out, and the University of the University of Kansas, and the Spencer Gallery, along with the Stellas, hosted a wonderful gathering, and I really appreciated that. So it's been brought out, but it was such an honor to have a room full of weavers and to show my most recent work. I was really happy to have the opportunity to weave this particular design. I met Valentine and Elizabeth in Haida, and they were interested in my weaving and asked me to weave this robe. And I said, well, can I choose the design? And they said yes. And so I was able to weave a design that has never been shown out in the world. It's the original is tattered and old, and it's in a drawer in Victoria, and I just feel so special to have been able to replicate this design. It's unique in all the world. You'll never find another one of this pattern, and I like to call him Ginga. And like Della had said, it's so amazing to weave something and then to have him or her come back and view you, So I had the sea bean. This is Ginga, the sea bean, that we all have a reverence for as canoe people. So I'd like to present this most recent weaving of mine. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you. No.
Thank you. Fascinating. I loved it, really. There's something that I should have done at the very beginning. And you know, when you're up here like this, and I'm not someone who does this kind of thing, like I get up and talk to a crowd, so I don't always think of things right off the bat. But at the very beginning, I should have, and I will do it now, invited the weavers, all you weavers. Doesn't matter if you weave cedar bark or spruce root, but we want all the weavers to just stand up to be recognized. Cedar bark weavers, spruce root, Ravenstail, Chilkat. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or intermediate or, well, there's no such thing as masters yet. But I just want to give a hand to all you weavers. Yeah. The next, what? I was going to, Shken. Yeah. Shken George, originally from Angoon, now lives here in Juneau, school teacher. Inviting Shken to come on up.
See, wow. Clarissa. I'll have to start by saying I walked in through the door today and went, ooh. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. So I feel very, I think in a more extreme way, what Evelyn was saying about, I really don't feel like I have anything to share. I'm such a learner, and I kind of jokingly to myself this morning thought, what am I going to talk about? And I thought, well, maybe I could talk about all the mistakes I make all the time, and that you just got to kind of keep going. But I sat down next to Della, and I looked at her, and I touched her, and I said, Della, I'm shaking. I don't know what I'm going to say. And she just, when she was standing here and she talked about how we help each other, she helped me in that moment and kind of said, you have lots of things to share. You can talk about your mother and your grandmother and the people who taught you and your daughter and what you're doing with your daughter. And I kind of went, oh, okay, that's what I'll do. So please just kind of bear with me. I'm just winging it. What I thought I would do is I did bring, when Clarissa asked me if I wanted to come and do this, she said, oh, you can talk about your blue robe you're making. And I kind of thought, oh, it will just be demonstrating and I'll sit over there and I'll weave and people will talk to me and it will be fine. Then, like I said, I walked in and said, well, what am I going to say about my blue robe? I don't know. But what I thought, as I've been sitting here, my daughter is here, and she is actually working on it with me. And so I thought maybe I'll just share with you my get-up and how I travel around with my loom, and my loom that I'll set it up, and you can just kind of see how I set it up. This loom and this ski bag that I have literally traveled around the world with me, and I weave every day, pretty much no matter what, even if it's like 2 minutes. If I'm just walking by and I just stop and I do, okay, and I feel better that I've done something today, even if that's all I have time for. So I take it with me when I travel. And it's a travel bag. Clarissa had mentioned a lot of things. I don't know if Clarissa knows how much she influences me, but she'll make some offhand remark and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. And one time she said, oh, use a ski bag for your loom. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And I went and got one, and I have a friend in Angoon who's a woodworker, and I said, can you make me a loom that will fold up and fit in this ski bag, and this is how long the ski bag is. And he made it, and it's an amazing loom. So I'm gonna do that. I'm not gonna be able to carry the mic with me, but I don't know, does that sound okay? I'm just watching. And I'm gonna have my daughter help me, and then maybe we can just kind of look at how her and I like to stand when I weave, which I find it uncomfortable to sit, so my daughter and I stand at my loom and weave together, and I think Evelyn and her family are such an inspiration to look at generations of weavers weaving together. I think that's my hope for my children, so yeah. Through the Narita airport in Japan like this with both my bags, trying to wheel it around everybody. You might have seen me coming in. I was carrying my littlest one and pulling my loom. And everybody was like, can I help you? Can I help you? And I was like, it's easier for me just to do it.
I have to say something about the ski bag idea. That's smart. She gets the ski bag first and then has the loom built. You know, my dad always said that I was backwards. I had my loom built, and then I tried to get a ski bag that fit, and I haven't been able to find one. So anyways, this is really cool. And I'm always, you know, as weavers, we like coming across new gadgets. And of course, ski bags that fit, or yoga bags that are, you know, a certain size that fit, you know, the bundle of our weaving looms. I mean, like for those of us who travel, we're always traveling, right? Some of us are stationary, but most of us in modern day, we travel, and it's all good. Anyway, I just wanted to commend Shken on her mode of thinking in the sense of ski bag first, and then the size of loom.
What's that? So it is kind of, I think, really genius what he thought, because all I had to show him was a lap loom that Clarissa used to use. I don't know if you still use them when you teach your classes, but it's a little lap loom where the bar goes under your leg and it fits together. But I took him that and said, I want this really big. and this is what he came up with. So it just has these little feet that...
She's using the bolts and nuts to put them together. You know, everyone has weaving looms that are, you know, pretty much made locally and in different ways. So it's really cool to see other people's looms. As weavers, we like to check them out. I just want to say that, you know, Shken doesn't know this, but she is the reason why this whole thing came to being. All it was when I first started thinking about, you know, coming back to Juneau, I saw a glimpse of her blue robe, and I thought, oh, I want to see that robe. But, you know, do I think in terms of, oh, I'm going to go visit her? No, I think in terms of, well, I want other people to see her blue robe. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just call up a bunch of weavers and ask them to come together. Let's see her blue robe. And so then I thought, well, why just leave it at that? I would like the whole world to see her blue robe. So she doesn't know that the reason why all of this happened, it just kind of blossomed out of me just thinking one morning, I want to see her blue robe.
That's so Clarissa. So this robe started off because I told you I took this loom to Japan. I went and did a teaching exchange there. And Gabby was 5. And while I was there, I made her a whole ensemble, as Clarissa says, with the headband and the apron and the robe, and it was black and pink, gradiated shades. And we did pick the patterns of a fireweed pattern on top, and then we made up our own design for the bottom, which was cherry blossoms. And then throughout the center of the robe, we did waves and icebergs, because where we were in Hokkaido, the Akos, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, sea freezes in the winter, and there was these amazing sea ice while we were there. And I had never seen the ocean freeze before. And so we put that into the robe. And then when we came back, I was like, oh, let's throw it in the juried art show. And then SHI said, oh, we'd like to buy that. And I said, Gabby, sell your stuff? And she said, no. And I said, I'll make you another one. And so she finally agreed, and this is the one that I promised her. So. It feels like this is really fast when I'm just doing it.
I just have to say something about the construction of this loom. It's very well made. It's finely crafted, it's sanded down and varnished, and it's smooth. And there are these cross pieces that help it from wobbling, which is really cool.
Leave it. Let's take a little bit. All I can think right now is I'm in a room full of weavers, and everybody's going to see all my mistakes. But do you want to say anything? So I told Gabby, you need to talk about your robe. But she, you want to tell them what your contribution was?
I helped weave like some of the rows for this, and I picked patterns.
So she liked the diamonds pattern, and she picked the colors. Again, I got to hear, and I said, Clarissa, I think one time you said something about when you wove your diamonds robe that you had to do 2 rows of each pattern. And so I said, is that what do I got to do? Do I got to do that? And she said, yeah, if you don't do it, your diamonds will be really squished and long and flat, which makes it be perfect for us weaving together, because then I can do the first pattern row, and she comes along right along behind me and does the next row exactly the same as the top one. Grab that in and I'll put it in. When we're at home, what we look like. Yeah. Other little things I have, like Clarissa said, this is a sponge basket for by your sink.
And here I spent like 2 days reading one for myself.
I use these over there.
Isn't it just cool that you guys all get to see?
I use long ones for.
Yeah.
You know where the baby socks are, so did you see my baby I had in here earlier? Every time. She'd come along, and she'd pull all the baby socks off, and I'd put them all back on, and she'd come and she'd pull them all off. So now they're just in her toy box. I gave up putting them back on, but yeah. Other things like dyeing, again, I had never dyed before, and now that I'm thinking about it, I think I must have a fairly decent memory, because I was like, I think Clarissa said Lanner set, Lanny, I couldn't think of it, and then I called her up. What is that dye? Lanaset. Oh, okay. And just started trying. And Marcia talks about mistakes. I think I did four skeins. First one was super, super dark. And then the second one was really, really light. And then the third one was okay, but I couldn't remember how I did it. So then the fourth one, I took really good notes, and it was right again, and I started dyeing. I know that some weavers are really good about taking notes about how much they use. This is my 4th Ravenstail robe, I think, or 5th. And I couldn't tell you how much weft I use at all. So I didn't know how much to dye, is my point. So I only dyed 4 skeins of blue, and you can see right here where it gets dark again. Because then I had to dye more, and I did a whole bunch, and then when it dried and I held it up to it, I was like, oh, it's too dark. Oh well. And we just kept going. So that's kind of me. I'm a teacher, full-time teacher, my girl, my daughter. Sometimes I just feel like, oh well, you know, so. What else? Other like hard things about it, like if you think about weavers, when you think about compact rows and how they usually go white, black, yellow, field or this, there's that one awkward row where you have the little fringes in the back. If you guys know what I'm talking about. But on this robe, I couldn't do that with how the colors were, so it was kind of like, well, how am I going to get the blue here and not here, but then here again with the white, and it was just kind of like a puzzle. And I think that's one of the things that I love about weaving, and Ravenstail weaving especially, is just kind of like that puzzle piece, and how's the pattern going to work, and how am I going to fit it all together. And once I get going, we had this conversation again the other day, I think it must be like what knitters feel like. It's relaxing, and you just go along, and it's just this rhythm in your hands, and it just like soothes me to just go to my loom and weave. I think Chilkat is a whole different being. And it's just so much more, just takes your brain, and concentration, and it just, I have to be in a different state. I can't sit down at it for 5 minutes. With this, I can do like we just did and do 5 stitches, and if I have to have that be it. But I am trying to do Chilkat. I've done a few things. I don't know how you guys do it so meticulously. I brought a couple. This is octopus bag that I made for Gabby. That's part of her regalia. And this, I just did this one. It's so cute. For my baby, with the little vest. So she'll be here. But like this, just this little tiny thing, I have to, you just have to think so much. Like, you have to really know what's coming up ahead of time. Like, how am I going to fit that in? Where do I start that shape? Where am I going to start my braids? And it's so much, you just have to be in a different place in your head for it. So I really enjoy having both going at the same time. I have another header with my first Chilkat robe on it. And then I have 2 other small looms that always have something on it. And I feel like I always want to have something Chilkat and something Ravenstail for wherever I am at that moment, for what I can work on. But yeah, I think that's it.
Can we keep the loom up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is Susie here? No, I don't see Susie. Susie Williams, who is supposed to do. Hi, Susan. So is Lily here? Lily is next. She must be out there. It's absolutely right. God, I want to respond to everybody, but we have, just a short amount of time. I want to say that what Shken has to say. Can you find Lily? She does. Okay. Shken says, that she does the Chilkat and the Ravenstail, like different projects. And it's true because, like she says, she can weave a little bit, with the Ravenstail, and with the Chilkat, you have to have more mind and more focus. And it's absolutely true. And I've taught my students that, and I taught it by way of experience when I did my first Chilkat robe back at the end of the 90s, that when you have various looms, and you have projects on every one of the looms, then you will always be weaving because they feed each other. And many of us weavers already know that, right? And so it's always, they feed each other, and I think they communicate very well at night when we're asleep. So anyway, we're going to have a group of ladies come up here. These women, I have to tell you the story on this. These women, they call themselves the Apron Apprentices. There's 5 of them. They come from the Portland, Oregon area. And they're going to present an apron that they just recently completed. Now, the reason why it's very exciting for me to have them here and why I invited them to show this apron is because a year and a half ago, in December of 2014, I had the honor to and time to come and spend a week with them, or maybe it was 2 weeks. Was it a week? 1 week. Okay. And I wanted to. I heard about them, and I heard that they had this apron, and I wanted to help them out as far as the fingering, so that it doesn't take 45 minutes to do one row. You can get it down to 20 because of Jenny Flonat's fingering technique that I learned. Also, I wanted to teach them some of the teachings, the spiritual and cultural teachings that Jenny taught me. And what turned out was they had this older apron that looked identical to, as far as the design field that was started, that looked identical to the apron that they were finishing. And they showed this thing to me, and I held it in my hands, and I thought, wow, it was obvious that it was mountain goat, okay? There was mountain goat warp and mountain goat weft, and that it was hand dyed. So I was holding this piece, and I asked, who started this apron? And the answer that came in was, Doris Khyber Gruber. Doris Khyber Gruber, according to Agnes Bellinger, who is Jenny Flonat's daughter, Agnes told me years ago that Doris, in the late 60s, who's originally from Portland, went to Klukwan and learned how to Chilkat weave from Jenny Flonat. And not only did she learn how to Chilkat weave, but she wrote a manuscript on how to weave Chilkat. Now, what happened to that manuscript, we don't know, but when Doris went back to Portland, she decided that she wasn't going to publish that manuscript. And the reason for that was because she felt that the Chilkat weaving, if she published the book, that would mean that it would be out there in the world, and she realized that the Chilkat weaving technique belonged to the people in the Northwest Coast, and that teaching the weaving by way of a book was not the way to do it. So she didn't publish the book. Where it went, I don't know, but here I am, I'm holding this, and I went, Doris Khyber Gruber, she did this apron? We're talking something that was started back in the late 60s, early 70s. So I'm thinking, I said to the girls, the 5 women, I said, holy shit, man. Does Doris Khyber Gruber have anything to do with Dodie Gannett, who started the apron that these 5 women finished? And so right away, these gals did research online, and they found out that Dodie and Doris were best of friends, and they were both weavers. They found out that these 2 women actually went to Kasan and taught. And so I had to give you the story because to me it was just so cool, because the lineage is Jenny, Doris, Dodie, the apron apprentices. See how it goes? Yeah. All right. Well, here they are. You can read their bio there in the program guide, and let's have those 5 ladies, these young ladies, come on up here.
No ceremony here.
You guys want to introduce yourselves? So I'll introduce this. This is Sally Ishikawa. This is Margaret Woods, Stephanie Anderson. Margaret Jeppesen, and Joni Zimmerman.
Okay. So we're not in line. Okay, my name is Joni Zimmerman, and I am thrilled and extremely humbled to be here today. We're going to tell you the story of how 5 strong-willed, independent, opinionated women made an apron together. We are all students of John Beard at Damascus Fiber Arts School in Damascus, Oregon. An Oregon weaver named Dolores Doty Gannett was one of the founders of the school, where we are privileged to meet once a month with John to weave. In the 1980s, Doty, who had already woven a robe inspired by the transition robe in the Portland Art Museum, started this Chilkat apron, inspired by an old apron she saw in the Chicago Field Museum, and also it was the same pattern that we know possibly Doris had done, and we don't quite know how it all happened, but she wove a few inches, and then she moved on and got interested in other things and didn't finish it. 2 years ago, her daughter brought the apron to John Beard and asked him to find someone who could finish it.
John approached some of his students, and who had done some Chilkat weaving, and the 5 of us volunteered to work together as a group to finish the apron. This started us on an amazing journey. Our first meeting together was at John's home, where we picked up the apron, and we had the apron on the loom, the weft, and the pattern board. We didn't have any instructions. Our only teacher was the apron. And I at the time had been hoping to find an apprenticeship, and suddenly the answer seemed clear, and we would be the apprentices to the apron.
So Doty had woven just a few inches of the apron when we received it, and fortunately the pattern that was started was repeated immediately. So by studying what Doty did, we were able to weave a few inches ourselves. And then miraculously, Clarissa came into our life, very fortunately. She was able to spend a week teaching us. The Native American Art Council at the Portland Art Museum helped fund that week for us, and we are very grateful for that. Clarissa told us stories, showed us techniques, but most of all, she gave us courage and support in moving forward.
We are thrilled to be here at Celebration 2016, 2 years later. It's been an amazing journey these last 2 years. The apron has taught us so much. And the weaving the weaving has connected the threads, the past, totally unknown to us in the beginning. It's a tale of the 2 aprons, as Clarissa said. With this apron came an older, unfinished apron of the same design with no materials to finish. This apron, we had enough weft material to finish it. Well, almost. That's another story. Chilkat weaving is so rare in the 20th century. It's still, it's becoming more prevalent now, but in the 20th century it was rare. and even rarer in Oregon and Washington, this far south. Dodie had already woven, before she started this in the 1980s, she had woven a robe based on the design in the Portland Art Museum, the transition robe. She was a good friend of Cheryl Samuels, who was researching and writing her book at the time, and we have correspondence between the two that tells about Cheryl getting that book published. Were there more weavers than what we knew, Cheryl and Dodie, in our area? Well, who wove the mystery apron? When Clarissa came to work with us, she took one look at the mystery older apron that is thigh spun. She said goat wool, but it was also the weft was thigh spun. I don't think we knew that until Clarissa pointed it out. And she said, Doris Khyber Gruber. Doris Khyber Gruber was a TV personality. She was from a Hollywood family. She was quite the fancy lady, we understand, as we asked other people after we found out about her. She had come to Haines, Alaska. She may have lived here in Haines for a while, and she learned from Jenny Tlinot. And she had woven her own robe in the 1960s. So this all predates the 1980s when Cheryl Samuels was writing her book. And indeed, Doris and Dodie had taught Native women in Kasson, BC, in 1971, and we have a thank you note from those women to know that date. But in her obituary, it was also noted that she taught, Doris taught Native people in Alert Bay area. And all these threads go back to Jenny. The ripples of Jenny's life came to us. And the apprentice apron will join Jenny's weavings at the Portland Art Museum. And we hope that it has an active life in its future, not just in a drawer untouched.
We would like to thank our teachers. You gave us a solid base and a path forward to completing this apron. We want to thank Clarissa for the chance to share our apron here at Celebration and for giving us the courage to get her done. We want to thank Dodie Gannett for dreaming of weaving this apron and for gathering the materials, warping the loom, and especially for beginning the weaving. That beginning was an important teacher for us over and over and over and over again. Thank you, John Beard, for the inspiration and insight to bring such independent and determined ladies together. And thank you, Cheryl Samuel, for writing your wonderful book with pictures, which there were a couple times when we needed that little bit of help. That was nice. I would like to personally thank the 4 weavers in this group, Stephanie Anderson, for your formline knowledge and for your tireless weaving. Margaret Jeppesen for your organizational skills. And Margaret set up the beautiful circles, so we needed her for that. Margaret Wood for urging us to just get started and that we could take it out if we needed to, and sometimes we did that over and over and over. And Joni Zimmerman for your computer searches, your determination, and we wove at Joni's house most of the time, so thanks for your house. And finally, we'd like to thank our husbands and families for listening to our worries and our excitement, and for their rock-solid support.
And thanks Sally for her artistic background as an artist. This is our real artist here. And she had a friend that taught us copper work. And
I think we're all wearing some.
All the cup and bead and drilled copper.
Yep.
And it's been a wonderful gift. It's been a wonderful gift to work with everyone.
Yep. Well, thank you.
You know, it would be really cool if all the weavings were kind of displayed up here. Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe at the end we'll do that. But Lily Hope, who has the Northwest Coast Weavers Supply, she's up next.
Hello, I'm Lily Hope. I'm a Chilkat weaver, descendant of my mother, Clarissa Rizal, Chilkat weaver. And you can see my work in the Artist in Residence space, the Dolores Churchill Artist in Residence room over here outside of the Clan House. I'll be there tomorrow between 12 and 3 if you want to stop by. I'm also going to be at the class tomorrow morning launching the 5x5 Weavers Across the Waters robe. I started a small business called Northwest Coast Weaver Supply, and I'm based here in Juneau, online and also on Facebook. It's based on the idea that actually Cheryl Samuel's daughter, Elena, has been doing for a long time in Canada, and that Kay Parker has been doing. She's been supplying people with a warp bank and yarns. So taking it another step further and to the Alaskan and Southeast people to help them have kits available and all that. So that's what I'm here to present about, that we actually have a couple of the squares already done for the Weavers Across the Water robe. This is from, so it's very exciting because there's 55 weavers that are already participating, not getting paid for this robe. And we're going to take, my mother is going to take all 55 squares and weave them together, kind of like a granny squares quilt. It's pretty fabulous. And I just want to share these two with you because one, here, let me see. One is from, this is William White from Victor Masset. Where's he from? Where's William White? From Prince Rupert. So that's William White. And I love William's work because he uses the finest weft yarns. I mean, he can get these lines, like he really is painting with yarns. It's so beautiful. So that's one of our first 5x5s. Thanks, William White. And then right behind here, I'm going to pull this guy out. We have Dolly Garza's little weaving here, another little 5x5. Can you tell it's a little urchin? His little guy sticking up. So cute. I love it. So thank you, Dolly. Thank you, William, for the first 2 of the 55 squares. And so tomorrow morning between 9 and 12, we're going to have a class upstairs here on the 3rd floor. It's open to the public. You can come see us start our other projects. We're going to get together and brainstorm pattern ideas. I'll have these little kits available. Check this out. Thank you, Kay Parker, for showing me how to make these. This is a little mini strappable loom. It goes to the back of a chair, or it even works over the back of like an airplane chair, so you can take this on your airplane on the way home. So that's kind of how these are starting. This is Chilkat warp, and it's about 5 inches, and you want to weave 5 inches this way, so that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. Let's see, what else? I have little kits right here for spinning warp if you want to spin. Susie will be upstairs tomorrow to teach us how to spin, not just with the drop spindle, but hopefully on a spinning wheel. And so I have some roving available for that. And what else do I have? I have a tiny bit of, guess what this is? Spruce root. So if you want that, come talk to me. There's only this bag, so you can have it if you want it. My goal in starting the Northwest Coast Weaver Supply was to make it easier and more uniform, or not uniform, but like easier for all of us to have really fine materials to work with. And if you are a spinner, come talk to me. If Kay Parker, I usually get my warp from Kay, and she gets hers from Elena, so we're supporting Cheryl Samuel's daughter as well. Let's see. Oh, I also carry, as Kay does as well. Oh, yes, and I also carry Ricky Tagaban's warp. He's a fantastic spinner as well. So I've been supporting his work, because he's a full-time weaver. So his bread and butter is sometimes selling warp to me. So thanks for supporting me, supporting Ricky, all that. So we're really bringing cottage industry back, I think. That's my goal, too, is to not just help you guys and help all of us weavers to do this together, but to support each other in making a living, making this art. So thanks for that. And these books here are put together by the Ravenstail Guild. Kay Parker produces these, or has the lot of these. And one is a dictionary of Ravenstail designs, and one is the dictionary of patterns and projects, both ancient and contemporary. I also have the Chilkat, what is it called? The Chilkat Weaver's Handbook that my mother put together a few years ago. I think it's in its 5th or 6th printing, and so it talks about kind of the spiritual life of Chilkat weaving, secrets and techniques. Full color right here, kind of spendy. These are a little bit, but lots of details to help you when you're like, which direction do I go? Do I go under, over, which way? So that's a little like mind check for right here if you want the Chilkat weaving book. These will be available tomorrow with the little kits for anyone who's doing a 5x5 tomorrow. But even if you're not weaving one tomorrow, come check it out, because there's nothing like the energy of 40 weavers in one room. It's super fun. I mean, we make jokes left and right, and it's so great to have us all together. So thanks for having me. And yes. Oh, yes, tomorrow the location for that is here at the Walter Soboleff building, upstairs on the very 3rd floor. And the elevator that's to the outside and around the corner here, that's the best way to get up. And thank you to Kari Groven and to SHI Kathy Dye for filming, for recording this historical event today, and for having us. What else do I want to say? Thanks to my teachers, to Kay Parker, to Clarissa Rizal, to all the weavers who are continuing these traditions. And enjoy the rest of celebration. We'll see you tomorrow.
I wasn't going to do it on stage, but
Can someone run out and shut the artist residence door and let James, who's in there, know to come in? Because I'm not there now. Okay, thank you.
All right, so first I'll talk about the design and the robe. It's funny because I spent like an entire morning drafting up my notes, and they're on my laptop, and I'm not sure where it is. but and then we only have a few more minutes here, so and they were notes that were going to be directed towards my weaving buddies here, some of my students and fellow weavers. And I guess I'm going to wing it too. So this Chilkat robe, Lily, will you help me hold this up? Maybe I'll have another person hold it. You want to hold it up? Okay. I'm not quite done with it yet. I have one more side that needs the fringe. I was sitting over here for a little while putting the fringe on.
Didn't talk about it.
Yeah, you guys hold it up. And so one side still needs some fringe. Go ahead. I'll talk about the how I came across doing the blue, and like Shken, I don't keep track of the colors. I don't keep track of how much of this. I mean, I barely write it down. I'm one of those kind of weavers that's just like, come on, just let's get her done. So this blue, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 years ago. It's Lancet turquoise, okay? However, I didn't measure it quite right. And not only that, but you're supposed to, mix it up and stir it up a certain way so there's no lumps. Well, I thought I got all the lumps out. And it turns out that in the dye bath, the blue came out variegated and uneven. And, $400 worth of weft yarns. Okay? So I'm like, oh my God. And while I was stirring the batch outside, I was like, oh my God, look at this color. And it just excited me. And then, it started getting darker and darker, and I realized, oh my God, it's not even even, and it's getting darker. Like, come on, take it out of the dye bath. So that's what I did. I took it out of the dye bath. But then the dye bath wasn't soaked, what is the term for that? Where the color wasn't all saturated, it wasn't all soaked up. So what I did was I threw in some more yarns so that it made it the lighter color, and it soaked up that, because, as Native people, we don't want to be wasteful. So what happened was, when it came to weaving this robe, and there I am, I'm starting to weave the robe, and I'm about to weave, and I had the black and the yellow, and I thought and I used a larger black and a larger yellow weft yarn, because that's the way I was taught by Jenny. She suggested that I do that because it's kind of like as a frame for your actual design field. So what happened was, I go to my cabinet and I don't find any of the smaller black weft. Mind you, when I designed this piece, I had it in mind that the form line, the entire Thunderbird, was going to be in the traditional black form line, okay? So there I am, ripping my cabinet apart, and I cannot find the 2/6 weft yarn. And I couldn't believe I didn't have any. And you know how it is, as weavers, we have the impetus to weave. Today I'm going to start weaving. And you gather all your materials together, and then you don't have it. It's like, what the? So I was like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden this bag comes out from the top and boom, right there on the floor, and I go, oh yeah, the 2/6 black is here. I opened it up and it's the blue, and I'm like, oh no. You're supposed to be black. And all of a sudden, my left-hand corner, it's my spirit guide, my whatever you want to call it, it kicks in and it says, this is the color you will use for your form line in the robe. And I'm like, what? But that's not traditional. And, I always argue with my left-hand corner because it always gives me answers I don't expect. And so I just kind of, and then I thought about it. Wait, because I know that that's what I do. I always have to argue with it first. It's like arguing with your man, You have an idea, and then he goes, oh, yeah, right. Well, that's how I am with my left-hand corner. So I thought about it, and I went, oh my God, yes, a blue thunderbird. And so I called up Susan Hunter-Jones, who commissioned the robe, and I told her I was going to send these little snippets of the yarn and ask her if she would mind if I used this color. So that's what happened. I sent it off. She calls me back and she says, I got the swatches. Go for it. Yes! I don't have to spend, another $200 on black weft yarn. So this is how it came to be. And what's that? Okay, well, they want to see the back, so, go ahead, show the back. This is the back side of the robe. Oh, God, there's so many things I want to tell you about this robe. First off, I designed this robe intentionally without any drawstrings. Not one. For all you Chilkat weavers out there, you know how good that feels? I mean, I'm proud of myself. I got some ego going on up here. Woo! Gotta tone that down. It's mainly excitement and I intentionally did it that way without drawstrings because I wanted to see if I had the kind of attitude and energy and patience and forthrightedness and all of that it takes to weave without a drawstring. Now, what does that mean for those of you who don't know what drawstrings are? Drawstrings are the inserts in a vertical portion of the robe, anywhere there's a vertical line, that allows you, as a Chilkat weaver, to weave one section at a time, so that you're not having to go back and forth, switching gears every time you are weaving a different section, okay? So in most traditional robes, you will see there's always these sections where there's straight down lines. Well, guess what? When you look at it real closely, most of the robes have drawstrings. Some don't. I met a tunic one time back in 1991 in Haines Junction. The Champagne tribe up there have this tunic that was woven completely without drawstrings. Now, back in 1991, I thought that was crazy. But here it is, 2016. I have grown to be a person who can handle weaving without drawstrings. Oh my God. Come on! So, the things I want to say about this robe, outside of that, Lily's throwing all these things out there for me to talk about. This is a Chilkat robe, but I used a lot of Ravenstail technique, okay? People want to know how I did the shading. It's Ravenstail technique. What I did was pretend that one of these strands is the light blue and one of these strands is the dark blue, okay? What I did was I tied them together, two strands, one of the dark and one of the light, okay? And when I wove the wings, so what I did was I'm weaving and I would decide, okay, well this is going to be black, and then I'd weave. Then it started to bring in the lighter color, so there'd be dark, and then the light, and then the light, and then come back, and then the dark. And so that's how that part was woven. That's how this part was woven. And I know that And I know, let me snap. Yeah. And I know that, most of us strive to have, symmetry. For me, I'm an asymmetrical girl. You can kind of tell because, number one, it's obvious I was not symmetrical, and I didn't want to be. I wanted to experiment with this piece as if we were painting with yarn. And, you can tell I'm asymmetrical. Look at this. That's only because the other parts are lost. So, hey. So you kind of make do. So that's how I did all this, was by way of Ravenstail technique. The ability to have two shades of weft yarn and switch them when you want to switch them. The other thing that I did on this robe was, 20, 25 years ago, I thought one of the weavers from Alert Bay by the name of Donna Cranmer, who's sitting over there, I swore she told me this story of how in the Vancouver Island area, the weavers of long ago wove what is called the fast black weavers. They called them the Fast Black Weavers Society. And what they did was in their borders, the black and the yellow borders, was they wove over not 2 warp ends like you normally do in Chilkat weaving, but 3. So when you weave over 3, it creates a certain texture that is unlike the old Chilkat robes, or unlike Ravenstail even. So all my robes, ever since I started weaving the robes back in 1999, I did the fast black in both the black and the yellow borders. So then I decided, to keep the cost of this robe down, because I wanted this robe to be affordable for the person who commissioned it, what I did was I experimented. Every one of my robes are experiments. That's just how I am. You can tell. You can ask my kids. I experimented on all of them. So I did the same thing here. Instead of 2 strands of warp that we weave over, I did 3. All of this area in the background of the Thunderbird is 3-strand, the fast black weavers. Same with the background. The only time I use the 2-strand of warp, like Chilkat, is in the smaller areas here, because I wanted to have control. Okay? The fast black weavers are good for large spaces, right? But not good for smaller spaces here. All these. So this is a Thunderbird, and we call it the Egyptian Thunderbird. It has a couple of Egyptian symbols in this weaving. Normally, our birds, their wings are, you see the shoulders are out like this, and the wings come down, like this, and the wings tips are down. In this case, I made it so that the wings were up like the Egyptian birds in a lot of those photographs. Secondly, there's the scarab. That's a sacred symbol in the Egyptian culture. And then the eye above the head, the eye of illumination, enlightenment, foresight. So Susan Hunter-Jones, who commissioned me to do this robe, did this in honor of being adopted into the Thunderbird clan by way of an elder who just recently passed, Helen Watkins, who was Thunderbird. And Helen was going to wear this robe during celebration. She did not make it. She passed away in February. So it turns out that her youngest daughter will be wearing the robe. I just want to introduce to you now Susan Hunter-Jones. What's that? You know, there's so many things that I had written about, but I can't think of it right now. Anyway, well, as you can see, this side doesn't have the fringe like this side. Some of us use the actual fringe made with the cedar bark, and I didn't have any. I thought I had enough, and thank God for Lily's Northwest Coast supply. She had some Ravenstail warp, and so that's what I used here. Some of us actually use a finer yarn like we do on the overlay fringe. But in this case, I used the raven's tail. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to tell you about. See how there's no line down here defining the end of the tail? Well, guess what? How come there isn't any?
Artistic choice.
No. I didn't. Who said that? Oh, well, yeah, girl. That's exactly what happened. I ran out of the dark blue. And so I was like, holy shit, Lily. And I said, Lily, I've run out of yarn. What am I going to do? Oh, Mama, you're going to think of something. And so what happened was I decided that I would make it so that it's kind of disappearing down there. So it looks like, in a way, you can interpret the robe, like 100 years from now, that's what they're going to do. Oh, look, shit, this weaver, look how she's, oh, that's because the Thunderbird is rising up out of the ashes. The phoenix, exactly, the phoenix. It's great to have these two women up here whispering things into my ear. That's where I'm getting all this information, you know that. So yeah, isn't that a cool idea? So I'm just telling you, weavers out there, don't panic. As artists, as weavers, as thinkers, you can adapt. So no worries. Just, take it easy. Ask your left-hand corner. Your left-hand corner may tell you something different that you don't, would never think of, but guess what? I've been listening to my left-hand corner since 1989, and it's amazing how listening to your inner voice, as egotistical as all of us are, we tend to say, oh yeah, right, bullshit, But it always has proved itself right, and so there's this part of me that says, okay, step back, ego. I don't have to. Let's experiment. Maybe it's right again, and it's always been right on for me. So yeah, this might not be acceptable nowadays, but I tell you what, in 100 years, it's gonna be. So yes.
I think they're ready to come in.
Okay, good. Let's do it.
I'll just.
All right. So I think that this concludes the first Weavers Symposium hosted by SHI. And thank you again to Kari Groven for all of this and all the presenters, everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.